Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm gonna share my English learning journey with you. It's been a long road since 2014 with some wrong turns, but I finally found a method that works for me. Before we dive in, I want to make something clear. I was not born and raised in an English speaking country, and I have not studied abroad. Everything I'm about to share comes from learning English in a non English environment. Let's get started. Let's rewind to 2014, when my English learning journey began. Like many language learners, I started with what I thought was the right approach. I was determined to master English and believed that I had the perfect strategy. I want to share this with you so that you all don't spend your time in the wrong direction like I did. My days were filled with textbooks and vocabulary lists. I spent hours poring over grammar rules, memorizing word after word, and doing countless exercises. The logic behind this approach seemed sound to me at the time. They contained the essence of the language, the most frequently used vocabulary, and all grammar rules you need to know. I thought I was being efficient, tackling the language head on with these concentrated resources. But there was a problem, a big one. I was also fixated on exam scores. In my mind, high scores meant progress, so I tailored my study methods to each test. I trained myself on multiple choice questions, practiced fill in the blank exercises, and memorized example sentences. I felt a sense of accomplishment when I saw my test scores improve. I thought this is working, I'm getting better at English. But here's harsh truth I faced. Exam skills aren't the same as language skills. After 7 long years of this approach, the reality hit me hard. Despite all my efforts, the hours I poured into studying, and the improving test scores, something crucial was missing. Trying to watch English videos or listen to English podcasts was like hitting a brick wall. The words I so diligently memorized seemed to vanish into thin air. I could barely understand what people were saying. It was incredibly frustrating. I remember thinking, how is this possible? I've studied so much. But the gap between my textbook and real world English was enormous. I could recite grammar rules but couldn't hold a basic conversation. I knew vocabulary words, but I couldn't recognize them when spoken. This realization was a tough pill to swallow. 7 years is a long time to invest in something only to find out you've been doing it all wrong. I felt discouraged, even a bit hopeless. Had all the time been wasted? But looking back now, I see this period wasn't complete loss. It taught me a valuable lesson about language learning. It showed me that languages aren't just about rules and lists. They are living, breathing forms of communication. And to truly learn a language, you need to engage with it in its living form. This experience was the wake up call I needed. It pushed me to reevaluate my entire approach to learning English. I realized that I needed to make big changes to use English in the real world, to understand movies, have conversations, work and study internationally, and that's exactly what I did. After years of frustration, I finally reached the turning point in my English learning journey. It was a moment of clarity that changed everything. I realized I was facing two major problems. First, my reading speed was painfully slow. Whenever I picked up an English book or article, I struggled through each sentence. The reason? I couldn't replicate the natural rhythm and sound of English in my head as I read. It was like trying to listen to a song without knowing the melody. Disjointed and confusing. Second, when it came to listening, I was completely lost. I could hear the sounds but couldn't connect them to words or expressions. It was as if I was listening to a foreign language, which in a way I still was. These problems were incredibly frustrating. After years of study, I could still not comfortably read or understand spoken English. However, as I analyzed these issues, I realized that both problems stemmed from the same root cause. The core issue was my lack of exposure to authentic English sound and rhythm. All those years of studying from textbooks and vocabulary lists have yet to prepare me for how English actually sounds when it's spoken naturally. I needed more real English input, both in text and sound, to train my brain to process the language effectively. This realization was both disheartening and exciting. It was disheartening because I saw how much time I'd wasted on ineffective methods, but exciting because I finally understood what I needed to do to improve. I needed to bridge the gap between written and spoken English. I needed to start processing letters and sounds simultaneously to connect the dots between what I saw on the page and what I heard in real speech. So I completely overhauled my learning approach. I started focusing on methods that would allow me to match letters and sounds. Reading while listening. I began reading books while simultaneously listening to their audiobook versions. This helped me connect the written words with their correct pronunciation and natural rhythm. Videos with subtitles. I started watching the English videos, TV shows, movies, YouTube content with English subtitles. This allowed me to see the words as I heard them, reinforcing the connection between text and sound. Pronunciation practice. I paid more attention to how words were supposed to sound, often repeating them out loud to get a feel for the correct pronunciation. Rhythm and intonation. I started focusing on individual words and the flow of entire sentences. I tried to mimic the rise and fall of English speech patterns. Extensive listening. I began to surround myself with English audio, podcasts, audiobooks to get more exposure to the natural sounds of the language. This shifting approach was the first step towards real improvement. It wasn't an instant fix. Learning a language never is, but I quickly noticed changes. Words on a page began to have sound in my head. I started to pick up individual words and phrases more easily when listening. Most importantly, I finally began to engage with English as a living language, not just as a subject to study. It began a new phase in my learning journey that would lead to much more significant progress. But this was just the start. There was still a long way to go and many more strategies to implement. Let me tell you about my current method. Now, let me walk you through my current learning method in detail. It's all about immersion and practical application. I've developed this approach over time, and it's been incredibly effective for me. Remember though, that everyone's journey is unique, so feel free to adapt these ideas to your needs and preferences. Reading and listening. This is a cornerstone of my method. I do extensive reading of books with audio, which helps me connect written words with their pronunciation. It's like killing two birds with one stone, simultaneously improving reading and listening skills. I use Kindle and Audible for their Whisper Sync feature. This amazing tool allows me to read a book and listen to its audio version simultaneously. The words are highlighted as spoken, reinforcing the connection between text and sound. It's been a game changer for me. For articles, documents, and even some books, I use Speechify. It's a text-to-speech AI tool that converts written text into audio. This allows me to read even when my eyes are tired or doing other tasks. It's beneficial for academic papers or long articles. I also watch series and YouTube videos with English subtitles. This approach exposes me to different accents, colloquialisms, and real-world language uses. Plus, it's enjoyable. I retain information better when I'm engaged and entertained. A tip: don't just passively watch. Although this is not always done, notice new vocabulary, expressions, or grammatical structures. Pause and repeat interesting phrases. This active engagement will significantly boost your learning. Writing. Writing is a crucial part of my routine. Every morning and night, I write in my English journal. I've created this journal myself, and I hope to share it with you all someday. Here's a pro tip that's been incredibly helpful. If I can't express something in English, I write it in my native language first, then translate it to English. I use DeepL for translation, which is a free and useful tool. This process helps me learn natural English expressions and bridges the gap between how I think in my native language and how to express those thoughts in English. I also use Grammarly for grammar and expression checks to improve my writing further. Like DeepL, it's free and beneficial. These tools have significantly enhanced my writing process. Avoid producing too much output within a limited input of English by only the same expressions. It's important to balance input and output and continually expand your range of expressions rather than repeatedly relying on the same ones. For me, writing is more of a priority than speaking. In today's digital age, we often communicate via text on various platforms, emails, social media, and messaging apps. So I put more time into writing practice than speaking practice. This focus has really improved my ability to express myself clearly and naturally in written English. Speaking, I'll be honest, speaking is not my top priority right now. I chat with friends in English when I can, but I'm letting this skill develop gradually. That said, I do recognize the importance of speaking skills, especially for those aiming to work or study in English speaking environments. I'm currently exploring effective ways to practice speaking, and I promise to share when I find a good method. Some ideas I'm considering include language exchange apps, AI conversation partners, and recording myself speaking on various topics. Vocabulary. For vocabulary acquisition, I use Anki. It's a fantastic tool for spaced repetition learning, which has been proven to be one of the most effective methods for memorization. I create a flashcard in Anki when encountering a new word or expression. On one side, I put the word or phrase. On the other, I include the definition and example sentence. I review these cards daily, following Anki's spaced repetition schedule. This ensures that I'm reviewing words just as I'm about to forget them, which reinforces them in my long-term memory. Immersion. Immersion is key to my learning strategy. I've changed all settings on my device to English. My phone, computer, social media accounts, everything. It's like creating a mini English environment around me. This constant exposure to English helps me to think in the language more naturally. It also exposes me to technical and digital vocabulary that often needs to be improved in traditional language learning methods. I also consume as much English content as possible daily. I listen to English podcasts during my chores and walking, read articles, and even try to think in English as much as possible. Remember, language learning is not just about studying, it's about living the language. The more you can incorporate English into your daily life, the faster you progress. This method has been working wonders for me. It's not always easy, and there are days when I feel like I'm not making progress, but when I look back at where I started, I can see how far I've come. Consistency is key. Daily small efforts add to significant progress over time. The results? Well, I can now communicate, read books, and enjoy videos in English. It's not perfect, but it's a vast improvement from where I started. My dream is to study at an international university and work globally. I'm not there yet, but I'm on my way. Looking ahead, I'm excited to try new techniques like intensive listening and practicing speaking with AI. There's always room for improvement, especially in listening and speaking. Let's quickly recap the key points of my English learning journey. Early struggles focused on textbooks and exam scores. I realized this method didn't translate to real-world language skills. Turning point: identify the issues with reading speed and listening comprehension. Recognize the need for more exposure to authentic English. Current method: reading and listening. Extensive reading with audio using tools like Kindle's WhisperSync and Speechify. Writing: daily journaling using DeepL for translation and Grammarly for checks. Speaking: gradual development, exploring new practice methods. Vocabulary: using Anki for spaced repetition learning. Immersion: changing device settings to English, consuming English content daily. Key takeaways: Language learning is about engaging with the living language, not just studying rules. Consistency is crucial. Small daily efforts lead to significant progress. Find methods that keep you engaged and motivated. It's okay to focus on your strengths while gradually improving weaker areas. Always be open to trying new techniques and adjusting your approach. Remember, everyone's language learning journey is unique. What works for me might not work for everyone, but I hope sharing my experience gives you some ideas to try. Keep pushing forward, stay motivated, and don't hesitate to change your approach if something isn't working. Thank you for watching. Let's improve our English together.